What's going on, everyone? My name is Benjamin Nowak with the Smallmouth Experience, and today's video is going to be focused on my top 3 baits for wintertime fishing. Now, a lot of people do top 5, but what I've found is that you can really narrow down your bait selection as you go into the wintertime, and these are the baits that I have confidence in to put fish into the boat all winter long. Whether I'm fishing a river, whether I'm fishing the Great Lakes, or small bodies of water, these are baits that I have confidence in every time I go out and that water starts to get cold to put fish in the boat. Now, what do I consider wintertime fishing? And this is going to vary depending on where you live. But up here in Michigan, basically anytime that water temp is below 50 degrees, that first temperature digit starts with the number 4, that's what I would consider wintertime fishing. Now, some people that's going to vary, but anytime it's below 50, I consider wintertime fishing. So these are the baits that I go through. Everything that you need to go out with these techniques and be successful on the water. And the first bait we're going to talk about is one that you guys have seen me throw a lot. If you guys have been watching my recent videos, I'll have them linked up here in the corner for you. And that is a Finesse swim bait. This is the Kitech Easy Shiner. This is a 4-inch size. And the favorite color that I've developed a lot of confidence in is the IU color. This looks like a lot of the different types of bait fish that we have up here in Michigan. Looks like a perch, looks like a little emerald shiner. This is something that I've developed some confidence in, and you can modify if you want to make it look even more realistic. But that 4-inch Kitech Easy Shiner has been my go-to in the IU color. But another color I really like is this Pro Blue Red Pearl. And the reason for that is when you want to imitate those alewives or some of those shad, you can go to this color here. And I don't like a lot of glitter in my baits during the fall. The reason for that, I feel like a lot of times that water gets a little bit clearer, gets a little bit more natural. I don't want a ton of flash on my swim baits, so I'm going with really muted style colors like this Pro Blue Red Pearl and the IU. And if I need to modify them a little bit with a paint pen, I can do that, add a little orange to the belly. But for the most part, those are my 2 colors that I'm throwing. And the head that I'm pairing that up with is the Outcast Tackle Golden Eye swim bait head. And the 2 sizes are 1/4 ounce and 3/8 of an ounce. And that's pretty much what I fish. What I like about this head is that it has that wire style keeper, but it also has a barb side to side. That helps hold this bait on to that hook. Now, I'm not saying you're going to get a bunch of fish on this bait. It typically is only going to last you 2 or 3 fish. But with this head, I feel like it keeps it pinned to that hook a little bit longer than most other swim bait heads on the market. Now, I'm going to really let the depth of water dictate what size swim bait head I'm throwing, as well as how deep those fish are positioned in that water column. So a lot of times I'm looking at these fish on Panoptix, or I know what depth they're sitting because I can see them on my graph. And so if they're suspended up, I like to go with a 1/4 ounce. I like to go with the lightest head possible because I really want to float that bait down to them. But if they're right on bottom or just off bottom, I'll go with a 3/8 ounce head, let it sink to bottom or almost to bottom, and start creeping it along. That's how I found it most successful. And 3/8 I can fish pretty much down to about 25 foot of water on a spinning rod and keep it pretty close to the bottom. So you don't need to go over 3/8 of an ounce is what I found. Now, if you want to put it on a bait caster, you can, but my success has been with this spinning rod right here. Now, this is the only spinning rod I have from this company, or the only rod I have from this company, but it's a Major Craft Nano Ace, and I picked this rod up because I heard a couple reviews that had mentioned this rod having a super slow action. Now, what do I mean by that? Basically, what I mean is that the rod bends way down into the blank, and when I'm fishing a Finesse swim bait, I like a really moderate action. I like something that fish can really load up on, and I don't feel it until it's already eaten it. Then I can load up the blank on that fish, and that helps me land a lot more of those fish. So that's a Major Craft Nano Ace. It's a 7'3". They call it a medium heavy extra fast, but what I found is it's actually like a medium or even a medium light, and it's more of a moderate blank. It's a super limber rod. Allows me to make long casts with that bait, but loads up really well when I want to get the hook into those fish. And then I like a really slow gear spinning reel. Now, typically I'm fishing Lew's products, but this is a Daiwa Exceller LT, the 300 size, and I believe it's a 5/4-1. It's a slower spinning reel than what I would typically throw. I like that slower spinning reel because it helps me slow down, so when I'm fishing that bait, I'm not reeling it along too quickly. A lot of times those fish are tracking that bait, and they'll come up and just eat it from behind, and if you reel in that bait too quickly, you'll pull it away from those fish. So that slower gear ratio helps me slow down that bait to land some more fish. Then I'm fishing it on 15-pound test Power Pro Vermilion Red Braid to 8-pound fluorocarbon. And this is a fluorocarbon I've been throwing. It's a P-Line Tactical fluorocarbon. Basically, one spool of this will last me all year going braid to a fluorocarbon leader. So that's what I do. Now, when I do my leaders, I pull like 6 arm lengths worth of line out. It's about 30 foot of line. And that really helps give me the advantages of fluorocarbon while I still have the sensitivity of braid. So I get the best of both worlds. And I like that longer leader because I don't necessarily trust my connection knot a lot. And when you have that longer leader and you set the hook, the shock doesn't transmit directly into the connection knot that you're tying. You have all that fluorocarbon to stretch before it hits the braid, so you don't tend to or end up shocking your leader and breaking it off a lot. So that's why I run such a long leader. The next bait I want to talk about is one that I've had a ton of success with in the past, and that is a small body crankbait. Now, the one I have on this rod right here is a Strike King 3XD and Chartreuse Blackback. That's a go-to color when the water gets off-colored, but I'm going to share with you guys a couple other ones that I've developed some confidence in or have confidence in based on historical fishing experience. And the first one is a Rapala DT10. Now, most of those fish this time of year, contrary to what most people believe, are still going to be up relatively shallow. You're still going to be able to catch these fish off shallow rock piles, shallow reefs, wherever those bait fish are, you're still going to be able to find bass. So the DT10 gets down 8 to 10 foot of water depending on what size line that I'm throwing. And I'm not sure the color on this, but I like the blue back with the chartreuse or pearlescent sides. It imitates those bait fish really well, stands out against that little bit dirtier or off-colored water, and triggers a lot of bites. Another thing that I like about this bait is because it's a balsa bait, it doesn't have any rattles. Super silent, more finesse than most crankbaits out there. It just triggers a couple extra bites for me, I feel, than traditional crankbaits. But going to some traditional crankbaits that I like, this is the 6th Sense CD10, I believe. Dives 10 to 12 feet, and it's a perch color. Has a hard one-knocker rattle. When I'm fishing colder water, I like baits that have single-knock rattles. And I've talked about this a lot on my live streams with Alex. That one-knocker transmits better through the water and triggers those fish to bite, especially in colder water situations, whether it's spring, fall, winter, whatever it is. When that water gets cold, I like to slow down and go to that one-knocker style as opposed to kind of that more traditional BB rattle. Now, the color that I'm throwing here, this is a yellow perch or the perch color from 6th Sense. I also really like their 300 DD crankbait. I'm not sure if they make it anymore, but it was a bait that I had a ton of confidence in, catches a lot of fish and dives a little bit deeper, dives at 15 to 17 foot range. A lot of times if you want to get to that little bit deeper water, you can throw that DD 300 15 to 17 foot or a 5XD and trigger some of those fish to bite that are pushed out just a little bit in that little bit deeper water. And a bait that actually came in the Monster Bass box that I've developed a lot of confidence in, caught a bunch of fish on this year, is the Spro Rock Crawler. Now this is the MD55, so it doesn't dive quite as deep as the traditional Spro Rock Crawler, and I like that for when those fish are pushed up shallow in rivers or onto those shallow rock reefs. This is the spring craw color, I believe. It's a brown back, chartreuse sides, yellow belly. It looks like a craw, looks like a perch, looks like a variety of different bait fish, and it's a bait that I really like because it comes across the rock really well. Kind of has that wiggle wart style action where it hits those rocks and kind of wants to hunt. That's what's triggering these fish to go. Now, normally I'm going to really finesse style crankbaits this time of year, but for some reason those fish in the rivers, even though it's cold, they're still going to chase this thing down and eat it. And here's the thing you got to realize about these fish. Yes, they're feeding up. Yes, they're trying to get fat. And by fishing a bait that has a lot of wobble, a lot of hunting action, those fish are reactionary creatures. They're going to have to come out and eat it. So the Spro Rock Crawler MD55 is a bait that I've kind of developed a lot of confidence in over other crankbaits when I'm fishing those river situations or shallower water situations. Now the rod that I'm going to be throwing this on is a rod that I've talked about a lot. It's the Arc Crankbait Series rod. It's a 7'4", medium heavy, moderate action. It's a composite rod, and what that means is it is part graphite, part glass. So it's a really limber rod. When you set the hook, it bends way down into the blank. Super parabolic bend. And it just keeps those fish pinned that would otherwise maybe come off if you're just throwing a traditional crankbait or graphite crankbait rod. So the reel that I'm pairing that up with is a Lew's BB1. This is a 6:4-to-1 model. It's a medium speed, medium gear ratio. Allows me to burn that bait if I want to, but I can slow it down, crawl it if those fish get really inactive. And so I like that medium speed reel. Then I'm fishing that with either 12 or 10-pound fluorocarbon line, depending on how deep I want to get my baits, if I want to crawl it, if I want to burn it. You're going to really kind of just play around with those, but typically it's 12-pound test fluorocarbon line. Now we're going to get to my all-time favorite wintertime bass bait. And if you were to just say, Ben, you get to choose one bait for wintertime bass fishing, wintertime smallmouth fishing, it's going to be a blade bait. And a blade bait is something I've developed a ton of confidence in over the past couple of years, and it just catches a lot of really big fish. And the reason for that is it's a super easy meal for these fish to come up and feed on. And I have a blade bait specific video where I really get into colors, where I'm fishing at, how to fish it. But you guys can check that out. I'll have it linked up here. But these are my favorite colors. Your traditional silver blade, a chartreuse blade, or a white blade, which all of those I will mix in depending on how I think those fish are eating my blade, what the water clarity is like, what the weather conditions are like. If it's really clean, really clear, the sun's out, I like to go with the silver blade. If it's cloudy, overcast, but the water's clear and I know they're feeding on bait fish, I'll go to the white blade. And if it's overcast or that water is really dirty, I'll go to the chartreuse blade. Especially if they're feeding on perch. A chartreuse blade will get bites when none of the other blade colors seem to be able to get bit. So this is a bait I have a ton of confidence in. Now the rod, reel, line setup for that, this is an ARC Randall Tharp Series 7-foot medium extra fast rod. I like to throw it on a spinning rod as opposed to most people throwing it on a bait caster because I feel like I'm able to land a lot more of those fish. One of the biggest issues with the blade bait that people talk about all the time is, man, I lose a lot of fish. Man, I'm jumping off a bunch of fish on a blade. Well, yeah, there's a lot of leverage for that fish to throw your bait, but if you fish it on a lighter rod, you fish it on a spinning rod with looser drag, those fish really aren't going to have that leverage. You're not going to be putting as much pressure on the blade. You're going to get a better hook set, and especially if you're using really sharp number 6 treble hooks. These are Hayabusa TBL 930s or Owner ST36s. Those are the two hooks I go between. But you want to use a really sharp treble hook. These fish's mouths are really hard, so when you set the hook with a spinning rod in deep water, you're going to need to get that hook penetration, so you want to go with the really sticky, sharp treble hook. The spinning rod, though, is what's going to keep that fish pinned along with your drag. Now, this is something I've been playing around with a lot, but I fish it with a relatively loose drag, almost so that when I'm reeling it in really fast, my drag's starting to slip. That's how I know that my drag is set perfectly, is when I reel that bait in really fast, the drag starts to slip on my reel. And it sounds dumb, but that allows me, when I hook that fish, for him really to play out the bait. I'm not in any hurry to get these fish in. There's no grass for them to get balled up in. I'm not fishing around a bunch of heavy cover. So fishing with a really loose drag lets me play that fish, keep that fish pinned, and get him in the boat most often. Now, I'm fishing a 5/8 ounce blade almost exclusively. I like that size because I know what it feels like. I know how fast it falls. I'm understanding pretty much everything that I need to know about the feel of that 5/8 ounce blade. And that's the same thing with me with a jig. You want to fish a consistent size bait so that way when you're fishing it, you know what it's supposed to feel like, what it's not supposed to feel like. If it's fouled up, if you got grass on it, you can really get in tune with that bait. If you switch sizes all the time, you kind of lose that feeling. You got to relearn it every single time you tie it on a different size. So for the most part, almost exclusively a 5/8 ounce blade bait. Now, the reel I'm throwing is a Lew's Team Lew's Custom Pro reel, 3000 size. It's a 6:2-to-1 gear ratio. This is where I like that faster speed gear ratio reel because I can pick up line quickly and I can kind of keep those fish moving towards the boat if I have to. When they make a run right at me, I can catch up with them, pick up that line, and that's why I like this faster gear ratio reel. 15-pound test Power Pro Vermilion Red braid to that 8-pound fluorocarbon leader. Again, I'm running a really long leader on this. I don't want to shock that connection knot, and so that stretch in that fluorocarbon helps me keep from breaking off. But Again, you're fishing fluorocarbon typically around rock edges, and around fish that have really hard mouths, so be sure to retie often when you're fishing fluorocarbon. One thing you'll notice, some blades come with it, some blades don't. You want to put a dual lock snap on these blade baits. So what that is basically one of those snaps, and I'm almost always using that middle hole. That's going to allow this bait to fall slightly nose down, and it's going to keep your bait from getting fouled up on every cast. Now, you will have times where the bait's going to get fouled up. It's just the nature of the bait. Just reel it back in, take it off the hook, and make another cast out there. The front hook will allow the blade to fall way more vertically or horizontally, and that's better when you're fishing the blade underneath the boat. And the back hook's going to allow it to sit forward like this. So again, if you're fishing it below the boat, it's going to fall super fast in deep water. I don't really see the purpose of this hole, but some people, I'm sure, have a reason that they like to fish it in the back hole. Middle hole for the blade bait. And those are my top 3 wintertime smallmouth bass baits. If you guys have any questions or comments, please let me know in the comment section below. There's going to be a lot of blade bait videos coming soon. Some crankbait videos might be coming soon. A lot of content coming at you guys, but if there's anything you guys want to see, let me know down in the comment section below. And I just want to say thank you guys for supporting me moving to 100% smallmouth specific content. This channel is going to be smallmouth dedicated. Now, that doesn't mean I might not catch some largemouth accidentally, but we're going to focus our efforts on going out and catching big smallmouth bass. So if there's anything you guys want to know, if you guys like smallmouth bass, hit that subscribe button. Let me know in the comment section below. As always, thank you guys for watching. Take care. Tight lines. God bless. Pursue passion.